The warning. The galactic hegemony's fleet moved through space like a metallic storm cloud, darkening stars as it passed. For 7,000 years, they had conquered without serious challenge. 143 species across 12 galactic sectors bowed to their will. Their massive obsidian vessels, some spanning 20 kilometers in length, carried weapons that could crack planets and soldiers engineered for perfect loyalty and ruthless efficiency. Fleet Commander Zarvax stood on the command bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominance, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic display of their next target. A small blue-green planet called Earth in the unfashionable western spiral arm of the galaxy. His scaled skin reflected the blue glow of the display as his thin lips curled into what passed for a smile among his kind. Another primitive world for the collection, he said to his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Nexra. Preliminary scans show limited technology, no meaningful space defenses, and fragmented political structures. Standard conquest protocol. Nexra, her skin a paler shade of green than Zarvax's, nodded in agreement. The archivists report they've only achieved rudimentary spaceflight. They've barely touched their own moon. Conquest estimate: 6 standard hours. The hegemony's process was always the same. Appear suddenly in overwhelming force, demonstrate power by destroying a few major cities, demand unconditional surrender, and then integrate the surviving population into the labor pools. Those who resisted were made examples of. Those who submitted lived to serve. The system had worked flawlessly for millennia. Prepare the first wave, Zarvax ordered. Target their largest population centers for initial strikes. Let's show them what they're facing. As the fleet approached Earth's outer solar system, something unexpected happened. A transmission reached them, broadcasting on all frequencies and somehow penetrating their encrypted channels. It wasn't coming from Earth's governments or military installations, but seemed to emanate from countless sources across the planet simultaneously. The message was simple. We know you're coming. We've seen your kind before. Run. Zarvax's upper eyes narrowed while his lower pair blinked in confusion. What is this? Some primitive attempt at psychological warfare? Nexra analyzed the transmission. It's being broadcast from millions of separate locations simultaneously. Our systems can't block it. Irrelevant. Zarvax dismissed. They must have detected our approach. A desperate bluff from a species about to be conquered. But as the fleet continued its advance, the message repeated continuously, growing neither louder nor more urgent, just persistent. We know you're coming. We've seen your kind before. Run. The calm certainty of it began to unnerve even the most seasoned officers on the bridge. The hegemony had encountered species that begged, threatened, or attempted negotiation. None had ever simply warned their would-be conquerors. Increase speed, Zarvax ordered, irritated by his own discomfort. Let's end this quickly. As they entered the inner solar system, their long-range sensors detected minimal defensive preparations. Earth's primitive satellites and a small space station were the only artificial objects in orbit. There was no evidence of defensive weaponry, no shield systems, no warships rising to meet them. Just that same message, repeating. We know you're coming. We've seen your kind before. Run. They're doing nothing to defend themselves, Nexra observed, her voice betraying confusion. Our intelligence shows they possess nuclear weapons. Why aren't they preparing to use them? Perhaps they've accepted their fate, Zarvax replied, but doubt had crept into his voice. The first wave of hegemony dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere, targeting major cities across the planet. 10,000 elite soldiers, each worth 100 warriors from most species, prepared for ground assault. Overhead, the massive capital ships positioned themselves to deliver precision strikes against military installations. The strange message finally stopped as the first ships entered Earth's atmosphere. The silence that followed was somehow more unsettling than the warning had been. Then the unexpected happened. As the drop ships approached their targets, they encountered no anti-aircraft fire, no missile defense systems, nothing that their intelligence had predicted Earth might possess. Instead, something else began to happen. One by one, the dropships started to experience critical system failures. Navigation systems went haywire. Communications cut out. Propulsion systems shut down. What's happening? Zarvax demanded as reports flooded in of ships crash landing or veering off course. Unknown, Commander, Nexra replied, frantically working her control console. There's no sign of weapons fire. Our systems are simply failing. On the ground, the soldiers who managed to land found themselves in equally bewildering circumstances. Their advanced armor, designed to withstand energy weapons and explosive force, began malfunctioning. Communication networks went dead. Targeting systems failed. And when they encountered humans, they discovered not a cowering population, but people who watched them with an eerie calm, as though they had been expecting them for a long time. Admiral Krell, commanding the ground forces, reported back to the fleet before his communications also went dark. Something is wrong. The humans aren't running. They're watching us. Some are even smiling. In orbit, Zarvax watched with growing alarm as more reports came in of inexplicable failures across his fleet. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were now experiencing cascading system shutdowns. Weapons wouldn't fire. Shields fluctuated wildly. And still, there was no apparent attack from Earth. No missiles, no energy beams, nothing visible that could explain what was happening. Scan for unusual energy signatures, Zarvax ordered. They must be using some kind of weapon we haven't encountered before. All scans negative, Nexra replied. Whatever's affecting our systems isn't registering on any of our sensors. Then they noticed something else. Small objects were rising from Earth's surface, thousands of them, too small to be vessels, moving too deliberately to be debris. As they approached the fleet, sensors finally identified them. Simple mechanical drones, using technology centuries behind the hegemony's own. Destroy them, Zarvax ordered, but as the drones surrounded the massive warships, more systems began to fail across the fleet. On the command bridge of the Eternal Dominance, lights flickered and control systems began to shut down one by one. Through the viewport, Zarvax could see the same happening across other ships in the fleet. Emergency protocols, he shouted. Prepare for. His words were cut short as every system on the bridge died simultaneously, leaving them in darkness broken only by the light of distant stars and the blue glow of Earth below. Then a new transmission reached them, not broadcast across all frequencies this time but directed specifically to the command bridge. A human face appeared on the emergency backup screen, a female with dark skin and eyes that seemed to hold both wisdom and something that might have been pity. We tried to warn you, she said simply. We've been preparing for this moment for generations, not just for you, but for any like you who might come. We've seen your kind before, in our history, in our own nature. Conquerors who believe power gives them the right to dominate. We outgrew that mindset centuries ago. Zarvax found his voice. What have you done to our ships? What weapon is this? The human's expression remained calm. Not a weapon in the way you understand weapons. A system designed to recognize and neutralize certain technologies, specifically, technologies designed for war and conquest. We call it the barrier. It's been dormant, waiting in Earth's magnetosphere, its components distributed across millions of devices, hidden in plain sight for over a century. Around the fleet, more systems were shutting down. Life support remained functional, but weapons, propulsion, and most communications were dead. The mighty armada that had subjugated nearly half the galaxy now drifted, powerless, above the world it had come to conquer. This is impossible, Nexra whispered. Their technology is primitive. They couldn't have developed something that could neutralize our systems. You confuse technological restraint with inability, the human replied, somehow hearing Nexra's words despite the disabled communication systems. We chose not to develop certain technologies because we understood their consequences. Others we developed in secret, knowing that species like yours existed among the stars. Zarvax's four eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep distress among his species. What happens now? You destroy us. The human shook her head. No, that would make us no better than you. Your life support and basic navigation will be restored shortly, enough to take you back to the edge of our solar system. Your weapons and faster-than-light capabilities will remain disabled until you're far from Earth. You expect us to just leave? Zarvax demanded, his pride wounded more deeply than his fear. We expect you to learn, the human replied, and to take a message back to your hegemony. Earth is not for conquest. We have chosen peace among ourselves, and will extend that peace to any who come in friendship. But we have prepared for war longer and more thoroughly than you can imagine. The screen went dark, leaving the command bridge in near total darkness. Minutes later, minimal systems began to reboot, just enough for basic navigation and life support. As promised, Zarvax stood in stunned silence, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The galactic hegemony, undefeated for 7,000 years, had been neutralized without a single shot fired. Your orders, Commander? Nexra asked quietly. For the first time in his long career, Zarvax had no answer. The humans had done more than defeat them. They had fundamentally challenged everything the hegemony believed about power, conquest, and the nature of advanced civilization. As the crippled fleet slowly regained enough functionality to limp away from Earth, that simple warning continued to echo in Zarvax's mind. We know you're coming. We've seen your kind before. Run. They should have heeded it. The reckoning. 3 days after the failed invasion, the hegemony fleet remained at the edge of the solar system, humiliated but not yet willing to admit defeat. Emergency protocols had allowed them to restore partial functionality to their systems, though weapons and faster-than-light drives remained stubbornly offline. In the war chamber of the Eternal Dominance, Fleet Commander Zarvax faced a holographic projection of the High Council, the 7 ancient members of his species who ruled the galactic hegemony from the distant throne world of Azarath Prime. Your report is disturbing, Commander, said High Counselor Dreth, her ancient face a map of wrinkles and scars from wars fought millennia ago. No species has ever repelled a full hegemony invasion force. You claim they used no conventional weapons. Zarvax lowered his gaze in deference. No, Exalted One. Their technology appears to selectively target and neutralize our systems. We have begun analyzing the few drone devices we managed to capture, but they appear deceptively simple. The true complexity must lie elsewhere. And the humans themselves. What did your ground forces report before communications failed? They seemed prepared, Exalted One, not panicked or surprised, almost as if. He hesitated, knowing how it would sound. Speak, Commander. Almost as if they had been waiting for us. Specifically us. The hegemony. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable to most, but Zarvax had served them long enough to recognize concern. This cannot stand, Counselor Vrex declared, his voice like gravel. No world defies the hegemony. Prepare the Nova Fleet. We will reduce this Earth to atoms. High Counselor Dreth raised a hand, silencing him. Patience, Vrex. This situation requires consideration. Commander Zarvax, you will hold position and continue attempts to restore your fleet. Reinforcements will arrive in 14 standard cycles. Do not engage the humans further until then. After the transmission ended, Nexra approached Zarvax cautiously. The Nova Fleet, Commander. They're actually considering planetary annihilation. Zarvax's upper eyes narrowed. The hegemony has not destroyed a habitable world in over 2,000 years. The Council must be truly shaken. But if the humans can disable our regular fleet, what makes the Council think the Nova Fleet would fare any better? Before Zarvax could answer, alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple objects approaching from Earth, reported the sensor officer. Small vessels, approximately 20 meters in length each. Hundreds of them. Battle stations. Zarvax ordered, then remembered their weapons were still offline. Evasive maneuvers only. All personnel prepare for possible boarding actions. The human ships approached rapidly, their design unlike anything the hegemony had encountered. Sleek, almost organic in appearance, with no visible weapons or propulsion systems. They surrounded the disabled hegemony fleet but made no hostile moves. Then, a transmission reached them, again bypassing their encryption as if it didn't exist. The same human female appeared on their screens. Fleet Commander Zarvax, I am Admiral Imani Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We've detected your communication with your homeworld. Reinforcements will not help you. They will face the same defenses that disabled your fleet. Zarvax bristled. You were monitoring our secure transmissions. Yes, just as we've been monitoring your kind for decades. Your encryption technology is impressive but fundamentally flawed in ways your scientists never considered. What do you want, human? Have you come to gloat before destroying us? Admiral Chen's expression remained impassive. No, I've come to show you something. Something your council needs to see. Before Zarvax could respond, the view screen changed to show an orbital view of Earth. Then the image zoomed out, revealing something that had been hidden from their initial scans, a vast network of satellites and stations surrounding the planet, most of them previously camouflaged or operating in spectrums the hegemony sensors didn't monitor. This is our defense grid, Chen explained. A small part of it. The visible part. Most exists in ways your science doesn't yet comprehend. The image shifted again, showing massive underground installations on Earth and its moon, then underwater bases, and finally something that made Zarvax's blood run cold. Ships, thousands of them, far larger than the small vessels that had approached his fleet, hidden on the far side of the gas giant humans called Jupiter. You've been concealing your true capabilities, Zarvax said, his voice hollow. Not concealing. Developing quietly. We discovered traces of your hegemony centuries ago. Debris from one of your conquest fleets that passed near our system. We analyzed it, understood what it meant, and began preparing. For centuries, Nexra whispered in disbelief. Admiral Chen nodded. We are a patient species, Sub-Commander Nexra. And cautious. We spent generations debating whether to reach out to the stars, knowing what might be waiting there. In the end, we chose a middle path, to develop the technologies we would need to protect ourselves while presenting a deliberately understated profile to the galaxy. The implications staggered Zarvax. You've been allowing our scout ships to observe your planet, showing them exactly what we wanted them to see, Chen confirmed. Primitive satellites, limited space presence, divided nations, all carefully maintained facades. Zarvax felt something he had never experienced in his 300 years of military service. Genuine fear. Not just for himself or his fleet, but for the hegemony itself. The Nova fleet, he said slowly. Your defenses could disable it as well. The Nova fleet would never reach Earth's orbit, Chen replied. But that's not why I'm here, Commander. I'm here to propose an alternative to the path your High Council is considering. The image on the screen changed again, showing a star map of hegemony territory. We've identified 43 species currently under hegemony control who maintain resistance movements. 17 have the potential for successful liberation with minimal support. Zarvax's 4 eyes widened. You're threatening to incite rebellion across the hegemony. Not threatening. Informing. We've already made contact with several of these resistance movements. They're waiting for our signal. This would mean war on a scale the galaxy hasn't seen in millennia, Zarvax warned. It would, Chen agreed, unless your High Council chooses a different path. What path? Coexistence, recognition of Earth and its colonies as sovereign and untouchable, a gradual transition of the hegemony from conquest to cooperation. Zarvax couldn't contain a bitter laugh. The hegemony has conquered for 7,000 years. The High Council would never agree to such terms. Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly, showing the first hint of emotion. Then they doomed themselves and countless others to unnecessary suffering. We don't want war, Commander. Humanity outgrew our love of conquest long ago. But we will not be subjugated, and we will not stand by while others suffer under your rule. You expect me to deliver this ultimatum to the High Council. I expect you to deliver facts, Commander. Earth cannot be conquered. The methods that would be required to destroy it would trigger defensive measures that would reach all the way to Azarath Prime. And even if you somehow succeeded, you would face rebellions across your territory within days. Chen paused, studying him. I've reviewed your service record, Commander Zarvax. 412 planetary conquests without a single failure. 63 rebellions quelled. But also 26 instances where you advocated for less brutal methods than your predecessors. You're a conqueror, but not a mindless destroyer. Zarvax was unsettled by how much they knew about him. You're asking me to betray my oath to the hegemony. I'm asking you to save it from itself, Chen countered. Your civilization was great once, before conquest became its purpose rather than its means. It could be great again. The bridge fell silent as Zarvax considered her words. The evidence of human capability was irrefutable. The threat they posed to the hegemony was far greater than anyone had imagined. Yet they offered an alternative to destruction. The High Council will demand proof of your claims, he said finally. Admiral Chen nodded. We anticipated that. She gestured, and one of the human ships approached the Eternal Dominance. We're transferring data crystals containing everything you'll need to convince them, including specifications of what would happen if the Nova fleet were deployed. After the data transfer was complete, the human vessels began to withdraw. Commander, Chen said before ending the transmission, there's something else you should know. Something we discovered in our research of your history. What's that? The Zarvath, your species, weren't always conquerors. 10,000 years ago, you were explorers, scientists, philosophers. The hegemony began as a mutual defense pact, not an empire. That history has been systematically erased from your records, but we found evidence in ruins on worlds you conquered long ago. The revelation struck Zarvax like a physical blow. Could it be true? Had the foundation of his civilization's identity been built on lies? Why tell me this? He asked. Because the path forward requires understanding the past, Chen replied. Your fleet will regain full functionality in 30 hours. Enough time for you to review the data we've provided. Then you must make a choice, Commander, continue down the path of conquest that will ultimately destroy the hegemony, or return to Azarath Prime and speak the truth that might save it. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Your orders, Commander. Nexra asked after several long moments. Zarvax stared at the small data crystal in his hand, feeling the weight of history and the future pressing down on him. Prepare a secure channel to the High Council, he said finally, and analysis teams for this data. I want to know if the humans' claims about our history are true. As the crippled hegemony fleet drifted at the edge of the solar system, Zarvax gazed toward the distant blue-green world that had done what no other planet had managed in 7,000 years, not just defeated the hegemony, but offered it a new path. He thought again of that simple warning that had greeted their arrival. We know you're coming. We've seen your kind before. Run. The humans hadn't been warning them about Earth's defenses, he realized now. They had been warning the hegemony about itself, about the self-destructive path it had been following for millennia. Whether the High Council would listen remained to be seen. But for the first time in his long career, Fleet Commander Zarvax found himself hoping for something other than conquest. The fate of the galactic hegemony now rested not on the strength of its weapons, but on its willingness to remember what it once was, and what it might become again.